Back when most characters we know of were children still learning the rules of addition and multiplying, the dominator of the universe was already too strong that no one in the universe was able to stop him. Remember that Boros is speculated to be more than 100 years old, as this is derived from Mels, who commented that these heads were intact for 100 years. Point is, their biology is surely different. This is maybe due to the harsh planet they had to live on, as Boros himself implied that specifically because of that environment, his species possessed the greatest natural healing in the entire universe. Well, we don't exactly know if Malzagard, Geryuganshup, and Groribas are from the same planet, but due to two of the aforementioned characters not possessing any healing factor, it is speculated that they're different species. What I'm alluding at is Boros' planet's condition forced its inhabitants to be strong to withstand it. A place like Earth to them would actually be heaven. This is exactly why Boris, whose blast companion that looks like Boros, is seemingly surprised that Earth produced someone like Saitama that can withstand a divine being. Now imagine this, Earth is a peaceful and livable planet, no harsh environment and no difficulties, and so the way for its characters to be strong is to force themselves to train. Flashy Flash, Darkshine, Bank, Tatsumaki, and many more. All of these characters chose to leave their comfort zone to become stronger. As for Boros' people or species, their normal inhabitants are forced to be physically strong, which would mean that their bodies should already be above the normal Earthlings we are accustomed to see. So imagine the potential of these guys if they train on the same level Earthlings do, only to produce a character who's on a different level when it comes to physical performance, healing ability, and potential energy. That character is Lord Boros. Now it could be that Earth's inhabitants are biologically stronger or superior, so this comparison wouldn't actually work. Even though Boris's comment gives merit to this idea, we'll have to scale him and the S-Class heroes based on factual evidence and on-screen feeds. And for exactly that, make sure to stick around. One of the biggest obstacles in scaling Boros within the series is how limited his exposure was. He only ever fought Saitama, who's the strongest character in the series. While the rest of the heroes remained unaware of his existence, most didn't even realize there were other monsters behind the invasion, let alone someone of Boros' caliber. And so, what's so interesting is that someone like Fubuki can consistently sense psychokinetic energy from Tatsumaki or even Gearspur, yet Tatsumaki never seemed to detect Geryuganshup using his abilities. This could be explained by the ship's advanced alien metal, which may have been capable of blocking or masking energy. It's also very strange that most of the S-Class heroes left immediately after the initial threat seemed contained. An alien invasion that aligned with Shibabawa's prophecy was unfolding, and yet they believed Malzagard and the ship were the extent of that danger. But anyways, nowadays when it comes to power scaling, people often focuses heavily on feats, hyper-analyzing every single move to gauge a character's strength. While obviously that's essential, especially in a series where the authors do care about consistent scaling, it sometimes comes at the expense of reading comprehension and narrative understanding. Take Saitama per example. He's met nearly all of the S-Class heroes, yet only two have any real grasp of his power. Silver Fang, who saw him destroy the meteor, and Genos, who withstand it firsthand. But even then, they still placed limits on him. Genos stupidly wondered if Goketsu could match him, and Bank entertained the idea of Saitama being trapped by the Monster Association. Others like Tatsumaki dismissed him entirely, and Atomic Samurai underestimated him despite his ability to sense ki. Even monsters like Carnage Kabuto couldn't truly measure him. He attacked with his Carnage mode thinking he'd surpass Saitama, only to realize too late that he was certainly wrong. But think about it this way, Boros, at literally first glance, he recognized that Saitama is the strongest he's ever encountered in the entire universe, claiming to sense no limits to his energy. And so in a story like One Punch Man, this is called merit. Reasons I said reading comprehension matters is because as a reader, this moment was conveyed to you to understand that out of all characters you've seen so far, this one is clearly different. But again, I do get it. Reading comprehension and narrative implications alone aren't sufficient enough to power scale. It certainly needs to be a combination of that set rules and feats. So what did Boros actually do? He's the first character to survive a normal punch from Saitama. His armor remained partially intact until he shattered it himself, suggesting his flexing strength is possibly on par with Saitama's punch, and he sent Saitama flying through multiple pillars with a single blow, something even Saitama's own punch didn't do in that fight. And despite the fact that Saitama's punches vary from each other, there's no reason for Saitama to use less effort than usual against another monster. It's only when the monster survives he uses more strength. Some argue Saitama was holding back, and that's certainly true, but not in the way people think. Despite him defending the whole time, he wasn't pulling punches to avoid killing Boros when he performs them. Each and every strike was meant to end the fight. The anime reinforces this when Saitama expresses frustration after defeating Pluton. Annoyed and frustrated, he was back to ending fights in one single punch. This implies that Boros was indeed surviving punches that were meant to kill him. It's also worth noting that Saitama only calls someone strong if they can survive his punches. He was surprised Boros' armor withstood the first hit, acknowledged his released form as strong after he took the punch, and after being sent to the moon, he admitted that Boros gave him almost a real fight. It's also worth noting that even in his meteoric burst form, Boros did survive Saitama's hit without immediately resorting to regeneration, which clearly shows that this form is much more durable than his released state. He after took consecutive normal punches and finally the series punch to finish him off. The official anime guidebook even states that Saitama was forced to use it to stop the collapsing star rolling cannon. And what's truly surprising is that Boros survived the shockwave of the series punch while nearly out of energy, which prompts Saitama to reaffirm and say, "As expected, you're strong." And to sum up all of this, Saitama praised Boros 3 times, called their clash almost a real fight, and had to use the series punch to end it. And so the main question is, could any S-class hero measure up to that? At the end of the day, this whole argument boils down to one single question. Can Boros take out Tatsumaki? If he can, then him wiping out everyone else becomes way easier to believe. And listen, I get why people talk about this. I see it everywhere. And personally speaking, I don't think it should even be a debate. But I do understand where the other side is coming from. For a lot of fans in the community, Tatsumaki just looks more powerful. I mean, we saw her handle Psycho Orochi pretty easily, and Psycho Orochi is supposed to be an upgraded version of Orochi who's already labeled as dragon or higher, the exact same category as Boros. And on paper, splitting a continent sounds way more impressive than just wiping the surface of the earth. So yeah, I see why people think Tatsumaki takes it. But here's the thing, just because two characters are in the same threat level doesn't mean they're equally strong. I mean, look at the Deep Sea King compared to Bug God, or Combo Infinity next to Crablante, or Gums and Black S. Threat levels are ranges, not exact power rankings. We actually covered this in a collab video with Satori talking about Orochi versus Boros that you should go and check out. However, there are a couple of things we didn't really dig into back then, some nuances and new information that's come to light recently, and shout out to Anime Board from my Discord server for bringing this up. So first of all, there's actually some question around whether Orochi really is dragon or higher. Murata did say that in a stream once, but right after he kind of backtracked and said, wait, no, just dragon. It kind of felt like he caught himself and corrected it, and that leaves us with two ways to read it. One, maybe he didn't want to spoil a new threat system that would give away how strong Orochi is, or maybe he thought about it and realized, nah, he shouldn't be in that or higher tier. The first one doesn't really hold up because we already had the data book that revealed the threat level, and hiding Orochi's strength doesn't make any sense. We already knew he was leading an organization full of insanely strong dragons. The second one though kinda makes sense. Maybe Murata remembered that Boros was officially called dragon or higher by one himself in a published data book, which is about as official as it gets. Meanwhile, Murata was just talking off the cut in a stream, not really thinking it through. He has a lot of instances where he needs to check with one to confirm. So the point is, it's totally possible that Orochi is just a dragon, not or higher. And interestingly enough, that's how he's actually listed on the Japanese wiki, which says a lot. I know this isn't strictly an Orochi versus Boros video, hero, but since Tatsumaki's scaling ties back to Orochi, it's relevant. Second thing that people need to talk about a little is that even though I do think Psycho Orochi is stronger than Orochi, I don't think the gap is that huge. Some people still think Orochi might be stronger, and honestly, we should be more open to that idea. It's worth to remember that Orochi was severely weakened when he fused with Psychos. He just used the Gaia Cannon and gotten wrecked by Saitama. And even in that state, Psychos was shocked by how much power he still had. So it's possible that fusing with a weakened Orochi, even buffed by God, still wasn't as strong as full-powered Orochi. On top of that, Psycho Orochi had a major weakness. She was stuck in one place, totally immobile, and relied almost entirely on psychic attacks. Orochi, on the other hand, is a true fighter. He's an actual genius. He can copy moves, adapt, and move freely. I think in a full-blown out fight, that's actually a huge advantage. Narratively speaking, just like prior arcs, it also makes sense that Saitama might have already taken out the strongest version of Orochi without anyone even knowing. Pair this with the fact that the authors did say at one point that Orochi would give Tatsumaki a high difficulty fight. So yeah, when you put all of these together, the Boros vs Tatsumaki debate gets a lot more interesting. But listen, for now, I personally lean more towards the idea that Psycho Orochi is stronger, but the arguments does make sense, and since it does, it kinda makes Tatsumaki look less impressive. So if you combine the fact that Boros is a legit dragon or higher threat level, while Orochi or Psycho Orochi might not be, it would paint an idea that Tatsumaki might actually not be on that level. But this is only when being completely biased and disingenuous by relying on insane hot takes even when they make sense. Tatsumaki on a narrative standpoint is considered to be an insane being. Her powers were glazed to be from another realm, and Black S lately put her on the same pedestal as Saitama himself. It's actually an insane statement since Black S knows that Saitama took out Awakened Garu in one punch, and if we assume that he witnessed what Garu did after he placed Platinum S, it would be insane stocks for Tatsumaki. Simply considering her on the same threat level as Saitama is pretty impressive. However, I don't think he realizes how strong Garu was, since the battlefield is extremely large, and assuming he could have watched the entire thing is false. Not to mention that Saitama vs Garu was happening on a much larger scale that no one knew they were fighting in the first place. So technically speaking, what Black S knows at this point is that Saitama took out Garu, who defeated Platinum S, which means he is putting Tatsumaki on a level higher than his Platinum state. Entertaining the idea that Tatsumaki might be on the level of Awakened Garu, which is Cosmic Fear Garu, based on this one single statement, just doesn't make any sense. But anyways, the other thing people mention when it comes to this fight is how Tatsumaki was impressively throwing Saitama in their fight, and that seemingly a stronger caved Baldy than the one Boros fought, substantiating this with Saitama saying to her that she's tough. First of all, he actually never said that she was tough. The Japanese wording used was Taishita Monda, which means either that's impressive or not bad. Paired to the fact that he wasn't really talking about her strength. He was in fact praising her tenacity and conviction of training to be strong in her specific field. In this instance, Saitama is being a role model, saying that he doesn't know what superpower training is like, but he's sure she trained a lot, telling her that if she keeps doing that, she'll be a great hero. He's actually praising her strength of moving forward and training to be a good hero, rather than praising her strength in the same sense he did with Boros. But people would still say that she actually did great. She was able to push Saitama and flip him multiple times, and they compared this with Boros' kick to the moon. However, there are very big differences between the two. It's not like Saitama is treated as a Darkshine that you simply cannot move. Multiple characters before that are like ants to Saitama were able to do the same thing. Are we really going to praise Suiryu for kicking Saitama in the sky, or Bakuzan being able to slide him to the edge of the stadium, or Carnage Kabuto throwing him around? It's just evidence that Saitama in most cases is suppressing his strength heavily. Simply pushing him around isn't a quantifiable feat. Multiple people were able to do that. But the reason Boros' feat is insanely impressive is because Saitama was defending himself before that happened. And after that kick to the moon, Saitama concluded that this is almost a real fight, which means on a narrative standpoint, this is regarded as insanely impressive. There's also a huge difference between Saitama's demeanor in Tatsumaki's fight and Boros' battle. Against Boros, he wants to kill him, tried 2 punches already, it's not doing the job, and looks visibly annoyed when Boros landed that punch in the neck. Against Tatsumaki, despite him being potentially stronger than before, he doesn't want to kill her, he just wants to go home, and there's absolutely absolutely no evidence that he's using even a fraction of his casual power. However, strictly speaking, all of the aforementioned arguments and points can be ignored by these three narrative statements. 1. Volume 7's backstory clearly questions Earth's fate if Saitama fails to protect it, implying that the second line of defense, which is Tatsumaki, might not be able to do the job. 2. The anime Compass guidebook suggests that a fight between Saitama and Boros is meant to be the strongest versus the strongest, when Tatsumaki again is present in that arc. The anime guidebook doesn't really have any contradictions to the manga, and in fact, multiple plot points that were only included in the anime's first season are being added to the manga story, such as the inclusion of the ancient king in chapter 126 that appeared solely in season 1. Not to mention that both One and Murata worked heavily on season 1, with One writing OVAs by himself, so if this guy is canonically writing OVAs, it means he was heavily involved in the entire story. So strongest versus strongest indicates that Tatsumaki isn't really on that realm. 3. Murata drew Boros vs Saitama thinking this is the heavyweight championship of the entire world, indicating that other than characters who lives in other dimensions and worlds and others who still aren't as strong as they are now, Boros and Saitama were the top contenders of heavyweights in the entire universe. So at the end of the day, the things that support Tatsumaki's claim to being superior aren't as strong as the things that claims that Boros is magnitude stronger. Not to mention the webcomic's new amplifications that strengthen his meta of being one of the strongest immensely. One other thing that you could mention is Tatsumaki's inability of controlling Saitama back when he still had hair in the audiobooks, suggesting that the only reason she couldn't is because he is a ghost. However, here's a take that people never mentioned. When Saitama became bold, he got access to that fuck you power. He became too strong that most of the times he's just physically too careless. As we said before, you can throw him around and things of that nature as long as you can't hurt him because of his busted durability. The way I see it, Saitama very well could be a universal or multiversal being and would still be thrown or moved by lesser beings. But back in the day, when he was still training, his body was physically tense, he was still experiencing new heights, and was walking with his newly founded strength. He was extremely strong, but he didn't have that fuck you power. And so his body was not careless, and he wouldn't be physically casual the whole time. Think about it this way, Suiryu is insanely weaker than Saitama and was able to kick him to the sky. Do you really think that Suiryu can kick someone like Darkshine to the sky, for example? Absolutely not. Now Switch is still training Saitama before he fully removed his limiter with Darkshine. Do we think Suiryu is doing the same thing? I don't think so. And so the point is, Saitama could be on that level of strength before becoming a gag that Tatsumaki, regardless of getting stronger or not, can absolutely not defeat. Well, take this explanation with a grain of salt, but the reason this is a strong possibility is because the implied narrative behind that data book is that Saitama, even before becoming bold, therefore breaking his limiter, is stronger than the strongest hero, backed up by the fact that Fubuki thought she can't imagine anyone doing that to her sister. Saitama, after breaking his limiter and already became too strong nobody can match him, said that Boros is strong 3 times and considered the battle almost a real fight, something that is better than anything Tatsumaki has on her back. Boros being stronger than Tatsumaki just has more evidence. So Saitama does not exist, the ship doesn't fall, the heroes defeat MASSACRE. What happens next? They somehow get on the ship, defeat Krorebas and Kiryu, and they finally meet Lord Boros. Everybody thinks this is just another dragon level monster, but Genos, after laying eyes on him with his senses, he concludes that this guy is insanely strong, and not being sure of how strong the other heroes are, he would suggest to immediately leave the ship. Tatsumaki is very arrogant and she thinks she can take him down, as we've never seen that she can feel how strong an opponent is without the said opponent initiating some kind of attack. So similar to her battle with Psycho Orochi, I don't think the other heroes would interfere. Boros would obviously want to test his strength with these planet's inhabitants to confirm the prophecy, and so the fight against Tatsumaki starts. So I'm obviously not into the opinion of Boros would be able to defeat Tatsumaki in his armored state. We do love Boros, but not to that extent. He'd really need to take off his armor. The way I see it narratively is after he does that, a Atomic Samurai senses his ki energy and completely shits himself way worse than he did with Platinum S. He would probably say either we gotta help Tatsumaki or we legit need to run and prepare to fight him in another day. Tatsumaki would still be arrogant and say I can't take him by myself. And so they start fighting. Tatsumaki is kinda keeping up, but Boros is having fun. According to Boros, nobody in the entire universe has seen this form and stayed alive. So he would in a sense be impressed by Tatsumaki, but I don't think Tatsumaki can physically restrain him. However, we'll be generous and say she'll at least keep up with him in this form. Boros after uses his meteoric burst, and Atomic Samurai would absolutely die from the inside. Kinda like Thorkel made that one Viking lose his mind just by intimidation. And this is exactly where Tatsumaki just doesn't compete. On a speed level, meteoric burst surprised even Saitama, who considers Flashy Flash kinda fast. And I'm on the kind of thinking that even though Tatsumaki is insanely strong, I don't think any hero other than Blast operates on the same level of speed as Flashy Flash. Well, at least for now. And being completely inferior to a Hulk-like opponent with insane levels of durability and strength would cost her gravely. The other heroes would start interfering using their absolute best, kinda similar to the fight of Psycho Orochi. They only decided to help when Tatsumaki got hurt. Silverfang uses the Awakening Breath, which in concept is similar to the Meteoric Burst. Genos would not choose to run away cause he always fights stronger opponents. Better pray that Child Ember already developed his Brave Giant weapon and the others would just attack at the same time. The problem is, this wouldn't really matter since Boros is much faster than any of them. Think about it this way, one solid punch would not only hurt Darkshine but break his will to fight. His speed makes Atomic Samurai look frozen in time, surpassing even Platinum S. He dismantled Genos more brutally than Koketsu and smashed through Brave Giant like it was nothing. Silverfang's technique might buy him a second, but against Boros' overwhelming speed, it's completely hopeless. And Tatsumaki, even at full power, her psychic binds wouldn't be able to hold him. I don't think she can injure him because even a punch from Saitama didn't force Boros to regenerate. This would just be a massacre. Things wouldn't really change if the other heroes didn't leave. Flashy Flash is kinda fast, but not shocking Saitama fast. Drive Knight would be collateral damage, Metal Knight would need to deploy his full arsenal to stand a chance, Zombie Man is a non-factor, and what would Puri Puri Tank Top Master Pick God even do? The only viable way to stop this alien is to somehow someway summon Blast, because if Boros chooses to Frieza style destroy the planet, he would just be able to. Now, the collapsing star roaring cannon is only stated to destroy the Earth's surface in the manga, but Boros was confident he can do that and destroy Saitama with it in the process. He already knew that Saitama has immeasurable energy and still thinks he can defeat him. Not to mention the retcon behind Boros' cannon being said to destroy a planet in multiple sources. It's also worth noting that destroying the surface of the Earth could be much more impressive to Murata and one than splitting a continent. These guys are not really scientists, and inverse scaling shouldn't rely on calcs and real-life physics. We simply check multiple other sources and most of them say that the Earth would be destroyed. So the S-Class heroes would only win if Tatsumaki wins, and even though her arguments does have merit and it's healthy to think that maybe she can stand a chance, the overwhelming evidence suggests otherwise. So Boros destroys everyone if Blast isn't included.